My uncle told everyone I was a failure because I didn't go to college. At Christmas, his own son pulled me aside to ask for a job. The whole table heard me say, "Sorry, we don't take liars." I'm Noah, 28, male, and I can still smell the burnt coffee from the night I decided not to go to college. Not because I'm nostalgic, because the smell soaked into the drywall after my uncle's voice bounced off it for an hour, while he told me, and my parents, and anyone within earshot that I was throwing my life away. That's Rick, 55, male, my mom's brother and the loudest man in any room, even empty ones. He's the kind of guy who taps his class ring against the table like a woodpecker pecking at your nerves and calls it conversation. I grew up in a house where silence meant peace. My mom, Carla, 50, female, is soft-spoken, careful with every word, like she's always afraid of waking a sleeping child. My dad, Jim, 53, male, doesn't talk unless he has something to deliver, like a tool or a punchline. Rick never learned the difference. He narrates his breath. He announces his opinions like they're weather alerts. That fall after high school, I stared at the acceptance packet from a college I couldn't afford and didn't want. I ran my thumb over the embossed crest until it went sweaty and dull. Then I slid the letter back into the envelope and tucked it under the coffee maker. The next morning, the filter overflowed, and a brown ring bled right through the school crest. That stain felt like the first honest thing I'd seen in months. I told my parents I wasn't going. I was going to work with my hands, apprenticeship, then a shop, then my own crew. My mom bit her lip and nodded. My dad exhaled and said, "Okay." Rick threw his hands up like I'd confessed to arson and said the word failure like it was a diagnosis. The thing about Rick is he collects people like trophies. He's got a list longer than his driveway. Who graduated, who got their MBA, who made partner, who married up. On that list, he keeps my cousin, Tyler, 23, male, right at the top. Tyler was the golden boy, the future CFO, with teeth so white they look like they hurt. At every barbecue, he'd give me this chin-up smile that said, "I'm being polite," while Rick shouted in the background, "Noah thinks vocabulary is optional." I started my shop, 2 borrowed saws, a secondhand sander, and a garage that smelled like gasoline and rain. I called it Harbor and Grain because I wanted it to sound like a place you pull in when you're tired, and wood that tells the truth when you cut it right. The first few months were brutal. I'd come home with resin stuck to my forearms, lungs full of dust, and orders lined up on sticky notes I kept losing because my sweat unpeeled the glue. My body ached in a language that felt older than school. Rick called those months evidence. He'd tell my grandma I played with plywood. He cornered me at my sister's birthday and tapped his ring against the cake knife. Ping, ping, ping. "How's the arts and crafts, buddy?" He said it loud enough that my sister, Ellie, 25, female, winced. I was holding a stack of coasters I'd made her. I put them down next to the candles and pretended to check my phone. Tyler added his own spice, subtly. He'd slide into conversations beside Rick, nodding. "It's just about long-term trajectory, man," he'd say to me. No shade. Then he'd talk about internships like they were war medals. I learned the art of smiling without showing teeth. But this isn't a story about me being humble. It's about the day the sawdust settled into something you could build a table on, and the way Rick still said failure like a full-stop sentence. It's about how the word followed me into rooms I wasn't in, and it's about a Christmas that started with matching pajamas and ended with a wine glass shattered against tile, and me standing up from the table, my throat tight, and saying a sentence that tasted like iron. Christmas was still 2 weeks away, but Uncle Ray, 56 male, had already started his campaign. He thrived on family gatherings the way some people thrive on oxygen. It wasn't enough for him to just attend. He had to dominate. Every December he found a way to remind everyone at the table that I, Jake, 28 male, didn't make something of myself. The man had this smug way of turning even a casual conversation about weather into a lecture on how Jake wouldn't understand because he didn't go to college. He worked as a mid-level corporate manager, the kind of guy who treated his badge swipe like a war medal. His favorite story, God help me, was how he pulled himself up by the bootstraps, conveniently forgetting his father-in-law gave him his first job. I used to bite my tongue, I really did. I'd sit there, swirling my beer, feeling the heat in my chest as he talked about kids these days wasting their potential. But last year, something shifted. Maybe it was because my company had finally hit six figures, or because my crew had just wrapped up a project that literally kept an entire hospital wing running through a storm. I wasn't some drifting dropout anymore. I'd built something solid with my own hands. Still, Ray didn't see it that way. He saw me as a living cautionary tale for his son Ethan, 24 male. Now, Ethan was complicated. We used to be close when we were kids. He was the golden boy then. Straight A's, varsity sports, teachers fawning over him while I was the troublemaker, sneaking off to work side jobs instead of studying. He always seemed to live under his dad's spotlight, like he was made of glass. Perfect GPA, college acceptance letters, all that. But over the last couple of years, I noticed cracks forming. He'd avoid talking about school, dodge questions about internships, brush off conversations about his future. Every time Uncle Ray bragged about him, Ethan would go red in the face and retreat to the kitchen for another drink. That Christmas, Ray took it further. He actually stood up mid-dinner and announced to the whole family, "I just want to say how proud I am of Ethan here. He's everything a young man should be. College-educated, ambitious, responsible. Unlike some people who waste their 20s thinking hard work means using a wrench." The table went quiet. Forks froze mid-air. My mother tried to change the subject, but Ray had already tossed the grenade. My ears rang. I remember gripping my glass so tightly I thought it would shatter. Ethan didn't meet my eyes. He just kept his head down, stabbing at his mashed potatoes like they'd done something to him. Later that night, after most of the family had drifted to the living room, Ethan found me on the porch. His face was pale, his breath visible in the cold air. "Jake," he muttered, almost choking on the words, Do you think your company's hiring?" For a second, I thought I'd misheard him. My uncle's perfect son, the college graduate, asking me for work? I didn't answer right away. My chest felt like it was splitting open. On one hand, I remembered us as kids, two cousins playing video games, sharing secrets. On the other, I could still feel the sting of every dinner where his dad dragged my name through the dirt. I just stared at him, waiting for him to explain. He didn't. He just looked desperate. And I realized right then, whatever he was hiding, it was bigger than both of us. I lit a cigarette even though I'd quit years ago. My hands needed something to do while Ethan fumbled through his request. "You're serious?" I asked. "You want to work for me?" Ethan nodded, his jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth might crack. I didn't finish college. Not really. Dad thinks I graduated, but I dropped out my junior year. I've been lying about it ever since." The words hit me like a hammer. For a second, I thought about all those nights Uncle Ray stood on his soapbox, holding Ethan up like some poster child, while I was the family screw-up. And the whole time, the kid was drowning. "What have you been doing?" I asked, softer than I meant to. "Bouncing between temp jobs, crashing on friends' couches when rent's late? I'm broke, Jake. I can't keep this up." His eyes shined in the porch light. Not quite tears, but close. Part of me wanted to grab him by the shoulders and shake him. Another part wanted to hug him. Instead, I just let the silence stretch until the cold bit into both of us. Before I could answer, the sliding door banged open. Uncle Ray stepped out, a tumbler of whiskey in hand, his laugh booming even though nothing was funny. He froze when he saw us. "What's this? My boy begging for career advice from Captain Sawdust?" His words were slurred, but sharp enough to cut. Ethan flinched like a kicked dog. I felt heat rise in my chest. "Go back inside, Dad," Ethan muttered. But Ray wasn't the type to walk away. He took a step closer, tapping that damn ring against the glass. Ping, ping, ping. "You don't need his pity, son. You're destined for bigger things. Not whatever the hell he does in that dusty garage." It happened fast. Ethan slammed his fist against the porch railing so hard the wood splintered. "Stop lying, Dad. I didn't graduate. I've been lying for years because I was scared of you." The air cracked open. I swear, even the laughter inside seemed to pause. Ray's face went red, first with shock, then rage. He swung his whiskey glass against the railing, shards exploding into the snow. "Don't you dare embarrass me like this," he roared. My mom rushed out at the noise, her hand to her mouth. Behind her, the whole family crowded into the doorway like a theater audience watching the curtain drop. And just like that, our dirty little secret wasn't a secret anymore. Ray's face twisted, blotchy red against the porch light, and for a moment I thought he might actually swing on Ethan. My dad, Jim, stepped forward just enough to block the gap between them. He didn't say a word, but his stance, the way his shoulders squared, was enough to keep Ray from crossing the railing. "Ethan," Ray snarled, shards of glass crunching under his shoes, "tell them you're joking, now." But Ethan just stood there, chest heaving. "I'm done lying for you. I dropped out. I never finished. I've been working crap jobs just to keep up the charade." The words hung like smoke. My aunt muttered something about calling an Uber. My grandma whispered a prayer under her breath. Ray turned his fury toward me then, jabbing a finger in my direction. "This is your fault," filling his head with that blue-collar nonsense, poisoning him against his own father. I laughed. Sharp, humorless. "Don't blame me because your house of cards fell apart, Ray. Your son told the truth, that's all." That's when Ray snapped. He lunged at me, shoving hard enough that my back slammed into the porch post. For a heartbeat, the world tilted, snowflakes catching in the floodlight. My mom screamed. Ellie rushed forward, pulling at Ray's arm, yelling for him to stop. "Dad!" Ethan shoved himself between us, his hands pressed against Ray's chest. "This isn't about Jake. This is about me. You don't own me anymore." Ray's voice cracked, raw and desperate. "I built everything for you. I sacrificed so you could be better than this. You don't get to throw it away because some dropout." I cut him off. "Careful, Ray, because the only one exposed as a liar tonight isn't me." He froze. The porch light reflected in his eyes like a cornered animal's. Then, without warning, he turned and punched the wooden railing. Splinters flew, blood blooming across his knuckles. He staggered back, breathing ragged, whiskey and rage pouring out of him in equal measure. Carla pulled me inside, her hands trembling on my arm. "Enough. Everyone inside, now." But the damage was done. The whole family had heard Ethan's confession, had seen Ray unravel in real time. The golden boy wasn't golden, and the man who never shut up about my failures had just made himself the loudest spectacle of all. As I walked past him, his blood dripping into the snow, he hissed so only I could hear, "This isn't over. You'll pay for humiliating me." And I believed him. Update. Wow. I didn't expect this to blow up the way it did. I posted last night half shaking, half running on adrenaline, and woke up to hundreds of comments. I read a lot of them at 3 a.m. because there was no way I was sleeping after what went down. First off, thank you. Seriously. Some of you told me point blank that Ray's behavior was abuse, not just family drama. Others said Ethan finally breaking was the most human thing he could have done. And yeah, I needed to hear that. Because part of me felt guilty. Like maybe I'd pushed too hard, maybe I was supposed to keep quiet like always. And then I scrolled and saw someone comment, "Your uncle is a bully who built a kingdom of lies. Don't let him drag you into the rubble with him. Burn it down." Not gonna lie, I screenshotted that one. Been staring at it all morning. Here's what happened after I signed off. Ray went full meltdown mode. He tried to storm back inside and give some speech about family loyalty, but Ethan wasn't having it. He told everyone, grandparents, cousins, all of them, that he'd been lying for years about graduating. My aunt cried. My grandma told Ray to sit down before he embarrassed himself further. He didn't sit. He smashed another glass. This time inside, right there in the dining room. Red wine all over the tablecloth, dripping down onto the hardwood. Ellie grabbed the kids and pulled them into the den. My dad was seconds away from calling the cops if Ray didn't calm down. And me? I just stood there, silent. For once, I didn't argue back. I didn't need to. The whole room had seen him unravel. But here's the kicker. Before leaving, Ray looked me dead in the eye and said, "You think you've won something here? Just wait. You'll regret this." So now I'm caught between two feelings. Part of me is exhausted and wants to forget the whole thing, and part of me wants to twist the knife. He humiliated me for years, labeled me the failure while parading around his perfect son. Now his mask is off. Some of y'all in the comments said revenge doesn't always have to be flashy, that the sweetest revenge is just living well. Respectfully, I disagree. This man needs to feel the sting. Not just in private, not whispered behind doors. Out loud, where everyone can hear it. Christmas dinner is coming. And if Ray thinks I'm backing down, he has no idea what's waiting for him. The next few days felt like living under a storm cloud. Every time my phone buzzed, my stomach tightened. Sure enough, it was Ray. First came the calls, voicemails thick with rage and whiskey. You ruined my son. You poisoned my family. You'll never be more than a carpenter with delusions of grandeur. Then came the texts, screenshots of Ethan's old transcripts, grainy photos of Harbor and Grain's garage beginnings, even an old Facebook post where I joked about dropping out. He was digging for dirt like a man trying to bury me alive. But the worst was the email. Sent to half the family, CC'd like some corporate memo. Just so everyone knows, Jake's business isn't real. He's a glorified handyman who'll be broke in 5 years. Don't let his lies infect Ethan. My mom called me in tears, apologizing for her brother's madness. My dad muttered, "Let him talk, he's just digging his own grave." But I was done being quiet. Because here's the thing. Harbor and Grain wasn't some rickety garage project anymore. Just last month, I'd landed a contract designing custom tables for a boutique hotel downtown. My work was in magazines. My name was on invoices that Ray's salary couldn't touch. So I started planning. Not the petty kind of revenge, no anonymous emails or secret gossip. No, this had to be surgical, poetic. Ray called me a liar? Fine. Let's talk about liars. Christmas night, my family always sat around one long oak table, the same one Ray loved to pound when delivering his lectures. I'd made that table years ago when I was just starting out. He'd mocked it then, said it looked homemade. Now it was the centerpiece of every holiday. I couldn't shake the image. Ray sitting at the head, his ring tapping wood I built, his voice booming while Ethan squirmed in silence. And me, always shrinking back, letting him own the room. Not this year. This year, I'd let his own son ask me for a job, in front of everyone. Not in whispers on a porch, not hidden in shame. Out loud, at that table. And when Ethan asked, I'd answer honestly. But not kindly. Because the truth was, I couldn't hire him. Not yet. Ethan had lied too long, played along with his dad's show. And Harbor and Grain? We don't hire liars. I rehearsed the words in my head. Sorry, Ethan. We don't take liars. It would sting. For him, for Ray, for everyone who'd swallowed the Golden Boy narrative whole. Was it cruel? Maybe. But Ray's spent years branding me the family failure. Sometimes, the only way to fight fire is to light your own match. And Christmas was about to burn. Christmas night, the house smelled like cinnamon and tension. The table, my table, gleamed under the soft glow of string lights. My mom had set it beautifully, red napkins folded like roses, candles flickering against polished oak. You'd never know there was a powder keg waiting to blow. Ray strutted in late, as always, wearing a smug grin that didn't quite hide the raw scrape on his knuckles. He carried himself like nothing had happened, like the porch explosion was a collective hallucination. His arm clamped tight around Ethan's shoulders, steering him like a puppet. Everyone, he announced, voice booming. I just want to say how proud I am to have my son home for the holidays. He's got a bright future, brighter than most. His eyes darted to me, sharp as glass. I felt the weight of my parents' gaze. Ellie mouthed, "Don't." But it was too late. The script was already written. Dinner unfolded stiffly. Forks scraped, conversations skittered like nervous mice. Ray kept needling, tossing barbs about real careers and paper routes in disguise. Ethan looked sick, pale, like every bite might choke him. And then, perfect timing, he cleared his throat. His voice cracked. Actually, I wanted to ask Jake something. The room went silent. Even the kids stopped fidgeting. Ray froze, his hand hovering midair with a forkful of ham. Ethan's eyes locked on mine. Desperate. Pleading. Do you think maybe Harbor and Grain is hiring? There it was, the crack of a gunshot. Ray slammed his fork down, metal ringing against porcelain. Ethan, not now. But I cut across him, my voice steady, loud enough for the whole table. Sorry, Ethan. We don't take liars. The words landed like an axe. Ethan's face drained white. The table erupted, gasps, whispers, a wine glass tipping and spilling crimson across the tablecloth like blood. Ray roared, "How dare you humiliate my son in front of this family?" He lurched up, fists clenched, but the candle nearest him toppled, wax splattering across his shirt. He cursed, slapping at it, only fueling the chaos. Ellie stood up, shouting, "Enough, Uncle Ray! You've spent years tearing Jake down and now your lies are catching up." Carla started crying. Jim bellowed for quiet. But Ray wasn't hearing any of it. He swept his arm across the table, sending plates shattering onto the floor. Ham, potatoes, glass, everything crashed in a storm of rage. Ethan stood too, his voice breaking. "This is your fault, Dad. You made me lie. You made me pretend I was perfect while Jake was the only one honest enough to live his life his way." And then, silence. Everyone stared at Ray, red-faced, shirt-stained, breathing like a bull. My grandma whispered, "Lord help us." I leaned back in my chair, heart pounding, and for the first time in years I wasn't the one shrinking. Ray had wanted a spectacle. I'd given him one. Update 2. Well, Christmas dinner went nuclear. I don't even know where to start. First off, holy hell, the comments. Some of y'all told me to play it classy and just keep my head down. Others were egging me on, saying to stab him with the truth in front of everyone. I guess I listened to the second group. So congrats, Reddit, you were basically sitting at that table with me. When I said, "Sorry, we don't take liars," the whole room froze like I dropped a grenade. Ethan looked like he'd swallowed glass. My mom gasped. My grandma whispered Jesus' name like she was calling him to physically show up. And Ray? He detonated, flipped a plate, screamed, smashed half the spread onto the floor. Ellie actually stood up and screamed back at him. I've never seen her that angry. My dad threatened to call the cops if Ray didn't calm down. It was carnage. Now the fallout. My phone hasn't stopped buzzing since I left. Half the family is furious with me. My aunt texted that I broke Ethan's spirit and that I owe him an apology. One cousin called me vindictive. But then, I've got messages from people I didn't expect. My grandma, the same one whispering prayers at the table, actually texted, "You spoke truth. Don't let him bully you again." Ellie sent a string of clapping emojis. And Ethan? He sent me one message at 2 a.m. "You were right. I've been lying too long. I don't blame you." I don't know what to do with that. Some of you in the comments nailed it before I even lived it. This wasn't about Ethan, not really. It was about cutting Ray open in the place he thought he was invincible, his image, his reputation. And watching him crumble in front of his own family felt cathartic. But I'd be lying if I said there wasn't guilt mixed in. Ethan's not his dad. He's just another casualty of Ray's ego. When I saw his face fall at the table, a part of me wondered if I'd just turned into the same kind of cruel that Ray always was to me. Still, Ray's kingdom is ashes now. No more bragging. No more golden boy pedestal. Everyone saw what he is when the mask slipped. And for the first time in years, I walked out of Christmas dinner with my head high. 2 nights after Christmas, I was sweeping sawdust off Harbor and Grain's floor when I heard it, the sharp crack of glass outside. I dropped the broom and bolted out the side door. My truck's windshield was spiderwebbed, shards glittering under the streetlight. Spray paint dripped down the hood in sloppy red letters. Failure. My stomach sank, but my fists clenched. Only one man had said that word with enough venom to scrawl it across metal. Ray. I scanned the street. Empty. Just the echo of my own breath. By the time I called the cops, my hands were shaking. They took photos, asked the usual questions, but I knew how it would go. Family drama. Hard to prove. Probably no charges. The next morning, I found an envelope shoved under the shop's front door. Inside, printouts of my old high school report cards. D's circled in red marker, the word loser, scrawled across the margins. I laughed, bitter and hollow. He was unraveling, a grown man rummaging through decades-old papers just to make noise. But I wasn't laughing that evening when my mom called, her voice tight. "Jake, your uncle showed up at our house, drunk, yelling in the driveway. Your dad had to drag him back to his car before the neighbors called the police." I sat on the shop's workbench, my jaw tight, sawdust sticking to my palms. "He's not going to stop, Mom. He's obsessed with proving he's not the failure, even if it kills him." Ellie texted me later that night. "Don't let him scare you. He wants you rattled. Stand tall." I wanted to believe her. But when I pulled into the shop the next morning, I saw something that froze me cold. The table. The oak table I'd built. The one that hosted every Christmas dinner. The one that held years of family memories, even if bitter ones. It was in the bed of a pickup truck parked across the street. Its surface gouged, deep knife marks slashing across the grain. And standing beside it, staring at me with eyes like broken glass, was Ray. He didn't say a word. Just patted the scarred wood, climbed into his truck, and drove away. The message was clear. If he couldn't destroy me, he'd destroy what I built. And for the first time since Christmas dinner, I wondered if this story was going to end with blood. It was New Year's Eve when the storm broke. I'd been working late at Harbor and Grain, sanding a slab of maple, trying to quiet the pounding in my head. The shop smelled like wood and varnish, familiar and grounding. That's when I heard the truck, tires crunching over gravel, engine idling too long. I stepped outside. Ray's pickup sat crooked across the lot, headlights glaring. The ruined oak table still lay in the back, its gouges catching the light like open wounds. He stumbled out, drunk, his shirt stained, eyes wild. "You think you won, boy," he shouted, voice cracking. "You humiliated me in front of everyone. You turned my son against me, but you're still nothing." I didn't move. My fists curled, but I kept them low. "Go home, Ray. You've done enough." He laughed, high and broken, and pulled something from the truck bed, a sledgehammer. He staggered toward the shop doors. "If you love this place so much, let's see how it feels when it's rubble." My chest tightened. Harbor and Grain wasn't just wood and tools. It was every hour I'd clawed myself out of being his failure. And then, from the shadows, another voice. "Dad, stop." Ethan. He stepped out of a beat-up sedan, eyes tired but steady. "This isn't Jake's fault. It's yours. You made me lie. You crushed me under your pride. I'm done living for your approval." Ray froze, hammer shaking in his grip. "Don't you dare talk to me like that." But Ethan stepped closer, voice rising. "You wanted me to be perfect because you're terrified you're not. Jake built something real. You built lies. That's the truth." For a heartbeat, I thought Ray would swing. His arm tensed, jaw clenched. Instead, he dropped the hammer. It hit the pavement with a dull clang, rolling into the dark. His face crumpled. Not just rage anymore, but emptiness. He looked smaller than I'd ever seen him. Without another word, he climbed back into the truck. The engine roared, tires spat gravel, and he was gone. Ethan stood there, shaking. I walked over, put a hand on his shoulder. He didn't flinch. "I'm sorry," he whispered, "for lying, for dragging you into it. You were right to call me out. I don't want to be like him." I nodded. For the first time, I believed him. That night, as fireworks cracked in the distance, I locked up Harbor and Grain. The oak table was ruined. The truck had scarred my lot, but I didn't care. Because Ray's empire, his lies, his pride, his chokehold, was gone. And for once, I wasn't the family failure. I was the survivor.